Okay, so today we are going to talk about comparing fractions. We're going to talk about 3 different ways you can do it. We've covered one of those before. We're going to look at 2 other ways. So when you compare fractions, you can create a common denominator. We can refer back to benchmark fractions, and I'm going to explain what those are. Or you can use the butterfly method. So first of all, with the common denominator, and it's normally going to tell you, and like on your lesson, it's going to say create a common denominator before you compare the fractions. So if you see the fractions 3/4 and 7/8, it's going to want you to change the fraction so that both of their denominators are the same. Well, this one's going to be pretty easy to do because I know that I can easily get from 4 to 8. To do that, I just multiply by 2. Well, like when we weighed equivalent fractions, whatever I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top. So 3 times 2 is 6. 4 times 2 is 8. So now I'm comparing 6/8 to 7/8. Well, I know that if they're both the same size whole and they're broken into 8 pieces, 7/8 is more than 6/8. So that means that 3/4 is less than 7/8. I made a common denominator. Not all of them are going to be that easy though, but it's still not bad. So if I see 7/5 and 10/8, well, there's nothing I can multiply 5 by to get 8. But to make a common denominator, I can say, okay, this denominator is 8, this one's 5. So I'm going to multiply my 5 times 8. Whatever I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top. So that means 7 times 8, that is 56. 5 times 8 is 40. So this is 56/40. Well, this I multiplied by 8. So on this fraction, I'm going to multiply it by 5. You just multiply by the opposite denominator. 10 times 5 is 50. 8 times 5 is 40. So now I have 56/40 and I have 50/40. Okay, my denominators are the same, so that makes comparing easy. I know 56 is more than 50, which means 7/5 is greater than 10/8. So if you can't, like we did with 4ths and 8ths, if you can't easily multiply one of your fractions to get to the other one, you're just going to multiply by the opposite denominator. This denominator is 8, so I multiply this numerator and denominator by 8. This denominator is 5, so I multiply this numerator and denominator by 5. That's going to give you a common denominator, which makes it really, really easy to tell if a number, or which fraction is greater than or less than. Another way we can compare fractions is to think of benchmark fractions. So that's going to involve a number line. And your benchmark fractions are 0, 1/2, and 1/2. So that means we're going to compare things to 1/2. That's going to help us. How close are they to 0? How close are they to 1/2? How close are they to 1/2? So if I say, is 4/9 closer to 0, to 1/2, or to 1/2? Here's how you figure this out. You always want to figure out what would half be. So what is half of 9? Okay, so 9 divided by 2. 2 can go into 9 4 times. 2 times 4 is 8. Okay, so I remember when I made my mixed numbers that my 2 becomes my denominator and my remainder becomes my numerator. So 4.5 is half of 9. Well, I have 4. So that means I'm really, really close to 1/2. So 4/9, if I look at my number line, it's much closer to 1/2 than it is anything else. I will tell you, benchmark fractions are my least favorite way to compare fractions because I think on number lines the same way I think when we draw models for equivalent fractions. I think it's really, really easy to not draw our fractions, not place them in the exact location, which then can give us some false ideas of where fractions fall on either equivalent fractions and models or comparing fractions on number lines. And I think that can help us make mistakes that we don't realize we're making. So I don't, comparing, using number line and benchmark fractions is not the way that I would suggest comparing fractions. The other way, our last way, which we did before Christmas, is the easiest way ever to compare fractions. It's butterfly. So if I give you the fractions, well, 2/3 and 1/2. Any two fractions I give you, 2/3 and 1/2. To compare them, you butterfly them. So that's where you draw your butterfly. There's its wings. 2 times 2 is 4. 1 times 3 is 3. 4 is greater than 3, which means 2/3 is greater than 1/2. Butterfly is the easiest way to compare fractions. Always the easiest. Even if your fractions get really large, you can still multiply them. Butterfly is the way I would choose if I were comparing fractions, and if it works for you, I would stick with butterfly.